Architecture is about freedom, and it's our opinion, it's our goal. It means that the space has not to constrain. In the opposite, the space has to open, to give more possibilities, to give capacities of uses, of appropriation, of improvisation. So it's why we like to design spaces that gives all these qualities. So give space with large possibilities of opening. It's why we like to use large structures that instead of constraining give flexibility, adaptation, possibility for the inhabitant to use as he wants. And also the freedom is to give extra space. It means that a program space is always a little constrained by the conventional use, by the function, by furniture. And we like to provide as much extra space as program space in order to give this potential of use, and the combination of open free space and more constrained space is the most interesting, because it gives this possibility of move, of freedom, of different uses. And for housing, for example, it's what we call dwelling like a villa. So because it provides all this potential of move inside, from inside to outside, to move from one room to another room by different ways. This is this idea of freedom.
For us, we can consider architecture as a poem. In a poem, with a minimum of words and with a delicate attention of the position of words, you can say the maximum of sense, but also maximum of dream for the one that will listen the poem. So architecture, it is like that. The words of the poem are spaces in architecture, and the space between the words are also other spaces. And it is this. And we are confident in the fact that at the end this process leads to beauty, to emotion, and to produce interesting spaces. So it means that we want to start all the time from the existing situations. They are always different. They are always, even if they are poor, they have a sort of richness that we should try to make visible, and how we can work with the situation. So the question in each situation, it is here, what do we need? Perhaps shadow is okay, perhaps the fresh air is there, perhaps the situation is okay, so nothing. Or perhaps just a little thing to add, or perhaps another thing to add, that's all. So it is this essential. We are confident in the power of the space. The space has power. Power to propose possibilities, propose some choice, propose some facilities, propose some varieties and diversities. So we think that we have to work with qualities of space: dark space, white space, reflective space, space open to the sky, underground space, humid space, warm space, etc., etc. So, in order to give the possibility of people, inhabitants, to use these spaces, to choose at one moment what is a good space I want to use. So it is about these qualities that we are interested, no more about function. We always say this word, this sentence, form follows functions. We don't believe no more in that in the existing city. We have to create spaces with no function, free spaces, because it is precisely when there is no function that a function, unknown function, will appear. And we are confident in the fact that we need this kind of spaces in order to stimulate creativity. We are confident that each inhabitant, each student has a lot of creativity in it, but the space should help him to find a way by a discussion with somebody, by at the end of 2 classes, to find a moment where in another space you will talk about what you learn in these 2 classes and to say the meeting point. There is something else that will happen. So it is this idea of this necessity of an extra space, undefined space, space with quality, no more space with function. We need the spaces with function. It is what we call double space. So you have always a space with a function exactly as it could be in a standard, but all the time we have the same amount of space which is free. And when you go out of your bedroom or your living room, you can discuss with your daughter or you can discuss with your son or with the children all together. And then something new appears.
It's also extremely important, and especially with the topics we have discussed about freedom, generosity, open space, space for uses, essential. And economy is extremely important because it gives us the power on the space. It gives us any possibility of freedom to design projects, and it allows to provide this extra space without any constraint of the limitation of budget. And very early in our practice we have understood, and especially with the first house that we have designed, we have understood that if we were able to control the cost, to find solutions, systems that allow to do more for less money, we could do anything. We could totally achieve our intentions, our goals of generosity, more space, more openness. So that's something that we are really interested with that, and not only interested, but we really develop this work of economy in parallel of the design, because we are sure that this is a condition of being free and being generous for the project. It's important not to undergo this situation, but to be creative and to take the power on this question. We are totally in line with this principle that we learn from space before we design the space. And learning from space means that first, the first work when we start designing a project is a very important and precise observation of the situation, of a site, of all the components, including the uses, the climate, the way of things are changing, the elements, the vegetation, the soils, anything. It's extremely important to check carefully all these questions, all these elements, to make a very precise inventory of all this and to understand what we have in hands. And just to link to what Jean-Philippe explained about the essential, it means that this extremely important work always leads to understand which are the values that we have already in hand and that are part of the project, and what we have to do to complete or not these values or to make what is missing, but always start from these values and never start from an empty space. So it's why it's so important to learn how to see a place before designing anything.